What's up, everyone? Tony from the Cold Case Project, back again. And today, what I want to run with you over is all content shared in these videos is readily available in any Google search. Now, with that said, I take this content, have it rewritten, and upon rewriting it, put it in these videos to spread the word on the thousands and thousands of cold cases of men and women throughout the United States that are just forgotten, and I give this platform to them so their cases and their stories can be told. Now, in addition to that, if you look down below in the description, you're going to see some brand new t-shirt and coffee cup designs I've actually gotten from a couple of my subscribers who have over the years have been giving me some awesome fan art. So with that said, I'm offering a 20% discount code down below if you check that out, and splitting proceeds with them because they are awesome. Been watching me for quite some time, and I definitely think they deserve to be rewarded for some of the work they do on top of being full-time employees also. So once again, if you have any recommendations or any suggestions, comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the video. Like, subscribe. I'm out. Peace.
It was the afternoon of February 21st, 2002. Just another quiet Thursday in the small town of Valiant, Oklahoma. A place where families know each other, where the roads are familiar, and where secrets don't stay hidden for long. But on that day, one woman, 25-year-old Hope Meek, a devoted mother of three, vanished without a trace. She left behind her glasses, her cell phone, her truck, and most haunting of all, she left behind her children. Or so we were told. Hope Meek lived a life of quiet strength. She was married to Jerry Meek, her husband of 4 years. They shared a home on Section Line Road, raising their 3 children, her oldest just 6 years old at the time. Hope had goals, dreams. She was working for the McCurtain County Sheriff's Department, escorting prisoners to court. She was just weeks away from finishing her criminal law degree, and she had plans to become a dispatcher. But behind closed doors, things were far from peaceful. Jerry told investigators he last saw Hope around 3 p.m. that afternoon. He said he gave her $500, then packed up the kids and headed out for a camping trip. According to him, the night got too cold, and by midnight, he returned home. But Hope was gone. Her 1985 Chevrolet pickup truck was still there. So were her keys, her eyeglasses, and her phone. But Hope herself vanished. Jerry didn't report her missing that night. Not the next day. Not the next one either. In fact, he waited 5 full days before he called authorities. To the outside world, this might have seemed like a sudden disappearance. But those close to Hope knew something darker was happening behind the scenes. Hope had confided in her sister, Mary Jane, about years of abuse. According to Mary Jane, there were 17 separate reports of domestic violence against Jerry Meek, though all records were conveniently lost in a burglary at Mary Jane's home after Hope disappeared. Hope said she was beaten so badly she couldn't even get off the couch to get her son a pickle. She told Mary Jane that Jerry choked her with a phone cord during a fight on New Year's Eve. One neighbor saw Jerry beat Hope in the driveway in full view. Hope was scared. She was ready to leave. Just a month before she vanished, on January 17th, Hope told her family she had a plan. She was moving to Florida. She had a job offer from the Walton County Sheriff's Office, and she was finally leaving Jerry. 2 days before her disappearance, her mother even wired her money to help make the move. But she never made it. What Jerry did next raised more than just eyebrows. He filed for divorce just 15 days after Hope vanished. He was granted full custody of their 3 children. He moved in with a schoolteacher, Marguerite Hart, almost immediately. He had Hope's name removed from property deeds. He took legal possession of her truck, even though it was registered solely to her. And still, Hope's body was never found. She never claimed her last paycheck. She never contacted her children. To this day, there's no bank activity, no sightings, nothing. Here's where things take a twisted turn. Jerry's girlfriend, Marguerite Hart, wasn't just a quiet schoolteacher. In 2004, 2 years after Hope went missing, Marguerite was convicted of killing her husband, Todd Hart. She burned his body so badly. Only his teeth were left for identification. She claimed she was a battered woman, took a plea deal for manslaughter, and served 8 years in prison. But that wasn't the only rumor floating around the local paper mill. Some co-workers claimed Jerry and Marguerite had a pact to kill their spouses so they could be together. When Hope was finally reported missing, the initial investigation fell flat. There were no cadaver dogs brought into the Meek home, no luminol testing for blood, no forensic search of the property, despite it being the last place she was seen alive. OSBI investigators later tried to get Marguerite to talk. They offered her a reduced sentence in exchange for the truth. But she never spoke. Not a single word about Hope's case. It took 10 years. But in August of 2012, Jerry Meek was finally charged with first-degree murder in Hope's disappearance. Prosecutors believed the motive was clear. She was leaving him. She was exposing his abuse. She was standing in the way of his new life. In November 2013, he was convicted by a jury who recommended life in prison without the possibility of parole. But even with the conviction, Hope's body has never been found. Why didn't law enforcement secure the home? What does Marguerite Hart still know? Could someone from the sheriff's department, where Hope worked, have helped cover something up? And what about the rumor that Hope had a secret relationship with another law enforcement officer before she vanished? Could that have triggered something even more violent in Jerry? The truth may still be out there, buried beneath lies, fear, and silence. More than 20 years later, Hope Meek is still considered a missing person. Her body has never been found. Her children, now grown, were raised by Jerry and his new wife, cut off from Hope's family. Marguerite Hart is a free woman. She's never publicly addressed Hope's disappearance. But many believe she knows exactly what happened that cold February night. Please, if you know anything about the disappearance of Hope Meek, call the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation at 1-800-522-8017 or contact the Q Center for Missing Persons at 910-232-1687. You can remain anonymous. You could finally give Hope's children the answers they've been denied for over 2 decades. The last time anyone saw Darien Michelle Hudson alive, she was wandering near the edge of a construction site on the west side of Stillwater, Oklahoma. She wasn't herself. She was staring blankly, barely acknowledging the people who spoke to her. She didn't seem lost in the way a person gets turned around. She looked like she was drifting, disconnected, perhaps scared, maybe resigned. One witness said she looked like she was waiting for someone. Another said she spoke to a child at a nearby bus stop before disappearing back into the trees. What happened to Darien Hudson? And why, all these years later, is her story still such an agonizing mystery? Darien Hudson was 23 years old when she vanished in October of 2017. Her life up until that point had been marked by both promise and pain. She was a former athlete, once a softball player at Langston University, with a warm heart, a bright future, and dreams of becoming a nurse. Friends described her as radiant, sweet, and thoughtful. She was the kind of person who'd stay up all night to comfort someone or offer her last dollar to help a stranger. She had a beautiful smile, a small frame, and a gentle presence. But in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, the foundations of her life had started to crumble. She had recently suffered a miscarriage, an experience she hadn't shared with many people, but one that had deeply affected her. Not long after, she lost her beloved dog, Ziggy. The grief of those 2 losses, compounded with the end of a romantic relationship, left her shaken, vulnerable, and unmoored. She was living alone in a small apartment on West 5th Street in Stillwater, and although she had a job working as a server at Chili's, it was clear she was going through something. She confided in her parents that she wasn't doing well, and they told her they were ready to bring her home, back to Wichita, Kansas, where she could regroup, heal, and figure out her next steps. On October 21st, she called them, and said she was ready. She wanted to come home. They agreed to pick her up that upcoming weekend. It should have been the beginning of her next chapter. But the very next day, something changed. Darien didn't show up for work. That was immediately a red flag. She was dependable. Her coworkers noticed and tried calling her. Friends texted her. No one got a response. One of her final social media posts came that morning. She had tweeted to a friend, "I'm not leaving you anytime soon, LOL." That tweet would take on a haunting weight in the days to come. By October 25th, Darien had gone completely silent. No posts, no calls, no texts, nothing. Her parents, Rhonda and Christopher, knew something wasn't right. They drove to Stillwater, arrived at her apartment, and found the front door unlocked. Her lights were on. There were dirty dishes in the sink, and some of her belongings were scattered around. But her wallet, phone, and keys were still there. Her bed didn't look slept in. It looked like she'd left suddenly, or maybe like she hadn't made it back home at all. They searched the area. They called around. They filed a missing persons report. But it wouldn't be until October 28th that police officially listed her as missing. By then, she'd been gone for nearly a week. Initially, investigators weren't sure what they were dealing with. There were no obvious signs of foul play, no forced entry, no blood, no broken furniture, nothing that screamed violence. But the absence of clues wasn't comforting. It only raised more questions. Then came a construction site. About a month after Darien went missing, a man in Oklahoma City tried to use her credit card at a hotel. The transaction was flagged, and when police questioned him, he claimed he'd found the card inside a purse hanging from a drainage pipe at a church construction site, St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church, located near McElroy and Country Club Road, northwest of Stillwater. That location would become critical. Police followed up at the site, where they found multiple witnesses who remembered seeing a young woman fitting Darien's description on October 26th, for days after she was last seen at her apartment. 2 construction workers said she had been sitting alone in a wooded area just south of the site, staring off into the distance. They approached her and asked if she was okay, but she didn't respond. Her expression was vacant. They notified their supervisor, and later, a group of workers went out again to try to speak with her, but she still didn't say a word. One local homeowner told police that later that same day, his grandchildren were getting off the school bus when Darien emerged from the woods and started talking to them. Another witness said they saw her sitting alone on some construction equipment, as if she was waiting for a ride. But then, she was gone. Search teams combed the area on foot with cadaver dogs, even with drones. They found a few items, her sweatshirt, her wallet, but no sign of Darien herself. No footprints, no clothing scattered deeper in the woods. Just traces, hints, ghosts of movement. So what happened? Was Darien suffering a mental health crisis? It's possible. The blank stares, the lack of verbal responses, the way she seemed disoriented, aimless. She had been through a series of emotionally traumatic events in a short period of time. Miscarriage, the breakup, the death of her dog, and then the looming move back home. It's not hard to imagine someone in that position slipping into a dissociative state, one where time becomes slippery and reality grows distant. But there are details that make that theory difficult to fully embrace. For one, the purse. According to the man who tried to use her credit card, Darien's purse wasn't lying on the ground. It wasn't buried in the woods. It was hanging from a drainage pipe. Who puts a purse there? Was it hidden, stashed, or was it staged? And why would she leave it, along with her phone and keys, if she was planning to walk into the woods or disappear? Most people, even in a state of distress, cling to their essentials. Darien had no vehicle, no way to call for help, no money. It's hard to imagine her just walking away from all of that, unless she wasn't the one who left it. Then there's the question of who she might have been meeting. Was someone waiting for her at the construction site? Did someone lure her there under false pretenses? Was it someone she trusted, someone she was trying to reconcile with, or someone she was afraid of? The name Brian comes up repeatedly in online discussions about the case. Brian Bushing was a friend of Darien's, and at one point, her father claimed he received conflicting information from him, first saying he wore white on the day of her disappearance, and later denying it. Additionally, someone claiming to be Brian, called a hospital asking about Darien before anyone else knew she was missing. It's never been proven that this was the same person. It's never been proven that it meant anything. But in a case with so few leads, these strange coincidences stand out. Stillwater police have said they don't suspect foul play, but they also admit someone likely knows what happened to Darien. That someone may not have come forward because they don't want to be implicated. Or maybe they were told a version of the story that minimizes their own role. Or maybe they're just afraid. The case eventually went cold. Leads dried up. The search efforts faded. But her family has never stopped looking. Her mother, Rhonda, posts updates, photos, and memories of Darien regularly. She holds on to hope. She begs the public to remember her daughter's face, her laugh, her spirit. She believes Darien is out there somewhere, or that someone who knows the truth is finally ready to talk. In 2020, Darien's face was printed on cold case, playing cards distributed to Oklahoma prisons. A last-ditch hope that an inmate might know something or overhear a confession. So far, no breakthroughs. Today, Darien Hudson has been missing for over 6 years. She would be in her early 30s. Her life, frozen in time. Her image, haunting. A woman who wanted to be a nurse, who wanted to help people, who loved deeply, and who, in the end, simply vanished. If you know something, anything, you're urged to call the Stillwater Police Department at 742-8333. No tip is too small. No memory too old. Because someone out there knows what happened to Darien. And after all this time, it's time for the silence to end. It was a quiet spring night in Tulsa, Oklahoma, March 23, 1979, when 28-year-old Kathleen Henson vanished in a thin air, her infant son Royce with her. In the hours that followed, her family's world began to unravel, and 4 decades later, no one has been able to answer the most haunting question of all. Where did Kathleen and Royce go? Kathleen was vibrant, music-loving, and known for her warm, open-hearted nature. She worked at Rogers Records, a popular music store on the 5000 block of North Peoria Avenue. One of the perks of her job was access to concert tickets, which made her a favorite among friends. That night, just before midnight, Kathleen called some of those friends. She told them she'd be stopping by within the hour to drop off a few tickets. She sounded casual, like any young mother trying to wrap up her day. Kathleen was driving her father's car that evening, a brown, 4-door 1969 Chrysler sedan. She had her baby boy Royce with her. But despite the phone call and her clear intentions, Kathleen and Royce never made it to their friend's house. They never came home, and they've never been seen again. There were no red flags immediately, at least not at first. Kathleen was divorced and deeply devoted to her children. That evening, she dropped off her older son, 10-year-old Eamon, at his father's place of business. The plan was simple. Eamon would stay with his dad for a few hours while Kathleen handled some errands. But the night took a strange turn. Later that evening, Eamon's father returned him to Kathleen's house, unaware that she hadn't come home. The house was locked. No lights were on. Kathleen wasn't there. Still, Eamon, just a boy, managed to crawl through a window, let himself in, and went to sleep, assuming his mother would return by morning. But morning came, and Kathleen was still gone. That's when the fear set in. Eamon, realizing something wasn't right, called his mother's best friend. She then called Kathleen's parents. And from that moment forward, nothing would ever be the same. 2 days later, on March 25th, Kathleen's father's car was found abandoned at the corner of Uta Street and Peoria Avenue in Tulsa. It was parked oddly, crookedly, which struck everyone as strange. Kathleen was known to be a meticulous driver. This wasn't like her. Inside the vehicle were several personal items: her straw coin purse, driver's license, social security card, a baby bottle, and a single credit card. But there was no cash, no extra baby clothes, no diapers, no sign of Kathleen or Royce. The area where the car was found was unfamiliar to Kathleen's family and friends. No one believed she had any connections there. Even more disturbing, when investigators searched her home, they found no signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play. It was as if Kathleen and Royce had simply vanished into the night. But something was off, deeply off. Before her disappearance, Kathleen had confided in people close to her that she was afraid of a man she knew, someone involved in criminal activity. She didn't go into detail. She didn't name him, but she was scared. And then, just days later, she and her baby were gone. At first, her parents tried to believe the best, that maybe Kathleen had taken a break, gotten overwhelmed, needed space. But as days turned into weeks with no contact, no trace of her or Royce, that hope faded. They knew something was terribly wrong. Shockingly, when Kathleen and Royce were first reported missing, police didn't launch an intensive investigation. They checked the car. They looked over her apartment. But beyond that, nothing. No canvassing. No suspects interviewed. No media alerts. It wasn't until 5 years later, in 1984, that Tulsa police reopened the case after Kathleen's mother pressured them for answers. By then, the trail was ice cold. Today, more than 45 years later, their case remains unsolved. Foul play is suspected, but without evidence, without leads, and with so much time lost, theories swirl endlessly. Was Kathleen lured out that night by someone she trusted? Did she meet with foul play from the man she feared? Was it a robbery gone wrong? Or was something far more sinister? It's hard not to wonder what could have been uncovered if the investigation had started properly back in 1979. 5 years is a lifetime when you're trying to solve a missing persons case. Witnesses forget. Evidence disappears. Stories change. And yet, we still remember Kathleen. At the time of her disappearance, she was 5 feet 7 inches, 125 pounds, with brown hair, blue eyes, and pierced ears. She would be 75 years old today. Her son Royce would be 47. All these years later, there's been not a single confirmed sighting of either of them. The only things that remain are memories, photos, and the aching silence left behind. If you have any information, no matter how small, you're urged to contact the Tulsa Police Department's tip line at 918-596-9122. One detail could be the breakthrough this case so desperately needs. To this day, one of the most haunting elements of the case isn't just the disappearance itself, it's the missed opportunities. The fact that Kathleen warned someone about a dangerous man. The fact that law enforcement didn't take immediate action. And the fact that, despite everything, 2 lives simply vanished, as if they were never here. But they were. And someone out there knows what happened. I want to hear from you. What do you think happened to Kathleen and baby Royce? Was it someone close to her? Or did she stumble upon danger that night, entirely by chance? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, please consider sharing it, because keeping these stories alive is how we make sure they're never truly forgotten. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe and stay curious. There's something deeply unsettling about a voice going silent, especially when it belongs to someone who was never quiet to begin with. Kathy Hemphill was not the kind of woman to vanish without a trace. She was devoted to her family, fiercely loyal to her friends, and inseparable from her dog. If something was bothering her, she spoke up. If something was wrong, you'd hear about it. That's what makes her disappearance all the more disturbing. The last confirmed sighting of Kathy was in October 2017. She was seen outside her home in the 5900 block of West 4th Place in Tulsa, Oklahoma, locked in a heated argument with her common-law husband. It wasn't a secret that their relationship had been turbulent. Her daughter later confirmed there was a long and painful history of domestic violence. That argument on the lawn would be the final time anyone ever laid eyes on Kathy Hemphill. After that day, she was gone. No phone calls, no texts, no updates on social media, just silence. Friends and family grew worried almost immediately. They called, they messaged, they stopped by, but every time they tried to reach her, they were met with vague excuses, mostly coming from her common-law husband. First, he said she was out of town. Then he claimed she didn't want to talk. Finally, he insisted she'd left for California. But something about the story didn't sit right. especially because Kathy had left behind everything: her phone, her purse, her clothes, her dog. And if you knew Kathy, you knew she would never abandon that dog. It wasn't until February 2018, months after she was last seen, that someone from Kathy's family finally filed a missing persons report. By then, precious time had been lost. Any evidence that might have existed was likely long gone. When detectives questioned her partner, his story remained unchanged. Kathy had gone to California. No contact, no destination, no forwarding number. Investigators didn't buy it. They called the claim implausible. Her daughter called it impossible. Kathy would never leave her daughter, never disappear without a word, and certainly never walk away from the life she knew and loved. But the story didn't end there. Shortly after Kathy vanished, someone else entered the picture: John David Lee II. He was seen driving Kathy's white 2005 Chrysler PT Cruiser, license plate 113HFG, the same vehicle that had disappeared along with her. The sighting set off alarms for law enforcement. How did he get her car? And more importantly, where was she? Lee wasn't a stranger to the police. In fact, his name had already come up in connection with another disturbing case: the 2014 disappearance of Richard Horn, also in Oklahoma. Just like Kathy, Horn had vanished without a trace. And just like in Kathy's case, Lee was the last known person to have seen him alive. It didn't take long for authorities to name Lee a person of interest in both disappearances. They wanted answers. They needed to know what he knew. Days later, Lee was picked up, not for anything related to Kathy, but on unrelated auto theft charges. Then, the day after his arrest, police recovered Kathy's missing PT Cruiser. It had been missing for months, but when they finally found it, there was no sign of Kathy anywhere. Investigators haven't revealed what, if anything, was discovered inside the vehicle. They've been tight-lipped about the details, likely hoping to preserve the integrity of the investigation. But behind the scenes, they were clearly chasing something. Despite everything, the suspicious circumstances, the history of violence, the car, the conflicting stories, no one has been arrested. No one has been charged. Kathy's common-law husband remains a person of interest, but without concrete evidence, authorities have stopped short of calling him a suspect. The same goes for John David Lee II. Two people have vanished under strange, potentially violent circumstances, and he's tied to both. For Kathy's daughter, this is more than a cold case. It's a daily heartbreak, the kind of pain that festers in the absence of answers. Every day that goes by without closure is another day lived in the shadows of what if and why. Kathy didn't just vanish, she was erased, and the people who loved her are still waiting for someone to break the silence. The parallels between Kathy's case and Richard Horn's are chilling. In both instances, people with no known history of simply walking away from their lives vanished after last being seen with the same man. And yet, here we are. No charges, no answers, just a string of suspicious events and a silence that refuses to break. Tulsa police still list Kathy Hemphill as missing under suspicious circumstances, but many, her daughter among them, believe the truth is far darker. This isn't just a missing persons case. This is a likely homicide, a cover-up, a story that remains unfinished because the people who know the ending refuse to tell it. Today, Kathy's name doesn't make headlines. Her face doesn't flash across national news. But that doesn't mean she's forgotten. She mattered. She still matters. And whoever is responsible for her disappearance has yet to face justice. As for John David Lee II, his name is still linked to two separate missing persons cases. That should raise eyebrows. That should raise hell. So we ask, who is Kathy Hemphill afraid of? Who gained the most from her disappearance? And why, after all this time, has no one been held accountable? Her case is, as of April 2025, remains unsolved. For most Americans, that date brings memories of sorrow, reflection, and loss. But for the family of Ray Johnson Jr., it carries a second layer of grief, one wrapped in mystery, betrayal, and a haunting sense of injustice. On that warm September evening, Ray Johnson Jr., a hardworking father of 6 and owner of Straight Up Auto Sales, a used car dealership located on North Peoria Avenue, called his wife. It was around 11 p.m. He told her he was about to tow a vehicle and would be home soon. It'd be the last time anyone would ever hear from Ray. Ray Johnson Jr. wasn't the type to vanish. He had deep roots in Tulsa, a reputation as a workaholic, and a strong connection to his family. Friends and family described him as focused, determined, and rarely idle. His dealership, Straight Up Auto Sales, was his pride, and like many independent businessmen, he poured himself into it daily. On the night he disappeared, Ray had just acquired a white 2000 Chevrolet Impala. It was an old police cruiser, still outfitted with decals, sirens, and working lights. It wasn't unusual for auto dealers to get ex-police vehicles at auction. Ray, always hustling, had taken a particular interest in that Impala. At 11 p.m., he told his wife he was going to tow it and would be home shortly. His tone was normal. Nothing in his voice suggested anything was wrong. But Ray never came home. When morning came and there was still no sign of Ray, his wife grew frantic. She drove out to the dealership. That's when she saw it, the Impala. It was sitting on the lot, inside the lock gate. The car appeared out of place, and as she got closer, her concern deepened into dread. The driver's window was rolled down. The doors were unlocked. That alone was strange. Ray was known to be cautious and meticulous. He wouldn't leave a newly acquired vehicle exposed like that. But then came the smell. A strong, almost choking chemical odor drifted from the vehicle. Bleach. Inside the trunk, the horror became clearer. A baseball cap was there, Ray's. One of his shoes was also in the trunk, blood-stained. It too had been drenched in bleach. Whoever had placed it there tried to clean something up. But not enough. The bleach couldn't cover it all. The scene looked like a hasty, panicked attempt to erase a crime. Ray's wife called the police. The case quickly escalated. There was no sign of Ray anywhere. His cell phone was off. His wallet and personal belongings were missing. The dealership showed no signs of forced entry or struggle. Investigators scoured the lot and the Impala. They took samples, swabbed the blood, and sent everything to the lab. There were no immediate suspects. But one thing was certain, Ray Johnson Jr. didn't just walk away. Foul play was suspected from the very beginning. Over the following days, leads came and went. Friends were questioned. Security footage was reviewed. But the deeper investigators looked, the more they began to focus on a name that kept surfacing in whispers. Gregory Jerome Epperson. Epperson wasn't a stranger to Ray. In fact, he was a relative, a cousin of Ray's wife, and someone who had been around the family for years. They even attended school together. But Epperson's background stood in stark contrast to Ray's. While Ray built his business and cared for his children, Epperson had racked up a criminal record dating back to 1993. Burglary, auto theft, you name it. He was known to law enforcement. In 2015, 7 years after Ray vanished, a witness came forward. His name was Jared Taylor, and he had a disturbing story. Taylor claimed that one night, Epperson pulled a gun on him, threatening his life, and forced him to help dispose of a body. According to Taylor, Epperson said he had gotten into it with his boy, a phrase that could easily be interpreted to mean Ray. The pair, according to Taylor, transported the body in a vehicle and dumped it into a creek. He said the body was lifeless, and Epperson made it clear this wasn't an accident. Investigators reopened the case with new urgency. They found the vehicle Taylor described. Inside, they located traces of blood. Forensics revealed that the blood belonged to a male member of Ray Johnson's family. Though not a definitive match to Ray himself, it matched the same DNA profile found in the Impala's trunk, on the shoe, and elsewhere. The evidence was stacking up. In July 2015, Gregory Jerome Epperson was arrested and charged with first-degree murder in connection with Ray Johnson's disappearance. It looked like the case might finally reach a resolution. Ray's family, long burdened by unanswered questions, hoped for justice. But that hope would soon be crushed. The trial was scheduled for early 2016. But just 3 days before it was to begin, prosecutors made a stunning announcement. The charges against Epperson were dropped. The reason? Lack of sufficient evidence. While the blood evidence was compelling, it wasn't conclusive enough. The DNA didn't definitively prove it was Ray's. Jared Taylor's testimony, while shocking, came years after the alleged crime and lacked corroboration. Without a body, without a murder weapon, and with circumstantial evidence that couldn't definitively tie Epperson to Ray's death, the case fell apart in court. Ray Johnson Jr. remained missing. By all accounts, Ray Johnson Jr. lived for his family. He had 6 children, all of whom were deeply affected by his disappearance. His wife never stopped searching for answers. To this day, Ray's disappearance remains unsolved. His dealership has long since closed. The white Impala was impounded and examined, but it no longer holds any secrets. The lot on Peoria Avenue stands as a haunting reminder of a man who left one night to do a simple job and never came back. No one has ever been convicted in Ray Johnson Jr.'s disappearance. Gregory Epperson remains a free man. Authorities have not announced any further suspects or developments since the charges were dropped in 2016. But the case is not closed. Ray's family still pleads for anyone with information to come forward. The Tulsa Police Department continues to list Ray as a missing person. The use of bleach, the blood evidence, the testimony of a coerced witness, and a cousin with a criminal past, it all paints a chilling picture. One that feels just shy of a conviction.